Welcome to Women on the Rise with Dr. Michelle Burkett.
Hello, Women on the Rise, and welcome. So glad you're here today. I'm also really excited about our guest, Marsha King. She's with us today, and Marsha is an ordained minister. She is passionate for missions and evangelism and has story after story after story of her just following the leading of the Lord and going after those that God points out and says, that one's mine, go get them. And she has written a book called For the One. And it's stories from the edge that reveal God's heart to reach the lost. And through this time together with Marsha, I hope that all of you are able to hear and become excited about the joy of sharing the word of the Lord, about the joy of bringing what we have to someone else and imparting that, sharing that, and watching countenance change as life comes into them. So this is Marsha King. Marsha, welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
And I love your book, and it so embodies the scripture in Matthew that talks about that if there's one sheep that's lost, we leave the 99. The shepherd leaves the 99 and goes after that one. And the rejoicing for that one sheep that is brought back into the fold is like it's greater than the rejoicing for the 99 that were present and accounted for. And Marsha, I love how that you are going into places that could be even intimidating, and sometimes are intimidating because they're outside our comfort zone in our world, right? It's to
Right.
many of us, it would be outside of a comfort zone. But God's called you and you have said yes. And I honor you for what you do, who you are, your obedience. And tell us how you heard the call to go.
Okay. Well, I was 39 before I even knew who Jesus was. And he started chasing me down the street. And at some point, he just took me in a vision to heaven where I met him in the throne room. And I was standing before him. And I was just so filled with his presence and his love. And my world faded to gray. I had a normal, great life, 2 kids, a career in San Francisco. But when I met him, I knew I was going to follow him wherever he led. And he gave me something. He told me I would be a fisher of men, and I didn't even know what that was. But he would tell me later that it was going to be called Ministry to the One, and that's capital O-N-E. I played to an audience of one, and little O-N-E. What he started to do is say, see that one? He belongs to me, go get him. And it started in San Francisco, and I'm compelled to follow him wherever. So it started in San Francisco in something called the Tenderloin. And I was in an event, and it was a room filled with people that were homeless, drug addicts, alcoholics. And I began to weep and say, you know what, I just want to know your heart. And he pointed to a guy that was addicted and said, see that guy, as he was, a little bit in tremors, that guy belongs to me. And then he pointed to somebody else who was passing out from alcohol and said, see that guy, he belongs to me. And then a question went forward and said, who needs hope? And a woman with a tear down her face said, see that woman? She belongs to me, go get her. And that was the first time when I got the opportunity to pray with her. He began to show me in a vision how the Father looked on compassion when his son was getting beaten. And then he showed me Mary when her son was on the cross and how she felt. And I began to pray that with her. And she literally, when the prayer was over, she looked at me and she said, how did you know? And I said, how did I know what? And she said, well, my son was beaten and I got mad at God and I've been on drugs ever since. But you were describing that the father knows my son because he was a good boy. And I said, I didn't know that. And she gave her life to Christ. And shortly thereafter, I was on the street and God pointed out a man coming down the street and said, see that guy? He belongs to me. Go get him. And I didn't know what to do or say. And so I went up to him and I said, hey, God pointed you out. Can I pray for you? And he began to weep. And he said, yeah, a second ago, I was on Market Street in San Francisco, and I was on the tracks about to commit suicide, and a voice said to me, hey, get up and go down the street. And the minute I did, you called out to me. And that opened up the opportunity for me to feel God's love for him. And he prayed to give his life to Christ. And that's the journey I've been on ever since. So that's how it got started. It's ministry to the one.
I love your book, Marsha, because it is filled with stories like that. And I know that, you would say, I actually wrote an endorsement for your book. And in the endorsement, I said, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Marsha King.
Yes, you did.
Your God too, to whomever would read the book. He's the same God for all of us. And, sometimes we can feel, I know, because we are in such a time of harvest. It is harvest time, right? And Marsha, you're such a hound dog for heaven. It's like God says, that's mine. And man, you go after that, the scent of who is his, and you don't let go until you get them in. And,
Right.
but for those who are hearing this and they've heard it of, go out, go past the comfort zone, go, take a risk, because, your faith is in that place of risk. The faith is outside of your comfort zone. And when we step outside of our places of comfort, that's when we really get to see God move, because he's faithful there. There's such a dependence on him there.
Right. Yeah.
So what would you say to someone to help them just sort of break through that initial intimidation that the enemy wants to place on us, so that we don't reach past the fears that can be there, all of the stuff that can kind of keep us contained?
Yeah. I want to tell a story, a quick story, because we train and equip people. I'm part of a ministry in Minneapolis where we have a homeless dinner every Sunday and Tuesday. And then we also train youth. And just to encourage people how excited God is to co-labor with us, we were given a youth group who came to town, and they were a little bit afraid to be out with the homeless. And God gave me an idea. I feel like what he will always do in these situations when he says, see that one, he belongs to me, is he gives me an idea of what to do. And then he gives me the love for that person. So I'm actually compelled. But they were junior high kids, and they didn't know what to say. And God showed me for the homeless, and I'll talk also about examples just in our neighborhoods too. But he showed me that all the homeless, they're homeless and need a home. Many are sick and they need healing. Many are addicted and need freedom. Many are hopeless and need hope. And so I said, pick one and flip it and just say, hey, I felt like God highlighted you and he would like to bless you with, and pick a couple. And so one young man, I think he was a seventh grader, he said, okay, I'll do it. And I asked them to have God highlight who he would like them to talk to. And so he highlighted a man, and he went up to this man, and it turns out he was a drug dealer. And he said, hey, God highlighted you. Can I pray a blessing over you? And he just said, I feel like God would like to bless you with freedom and hope for the future. Can I pray that over you? And when he did, the man just began to weep, because it was just simple and it was love. And that young boy stepped out in faith. God backed him up with his presence and his love. And I can always see it because I'll see tears coming out of their eyes. And that man gave his life to Christ. And that's what we see. I keep it short. I keep it simple. I let them know God highlighted them. And that's how we teach. And when you're ministering a love and a blessing, there's no mistakes, because most people these days need love and a blessing in whatever way. But that's how we do it, is we just, if it's negative, we flip to the positive, we see them with God's lens, and we just see so many coming to Christ, and God backs people up. If they're willing to say yes, then he'll bless their yes.
Yeah. Everyone has a story.
Yeah.
Everyone is longing for love, acceptance, to be seen, to be cared for, to know that there's compassion. And we are ambassadors of the heart of God. We're the light bringers for the kingdom. And to be able to go and you don't have to have like a divine word of knowledge always, right? It's just a matter of, heart of God, and heart of God for everyone. And it's just coming in and saying, hey, here's God's heart for you. And so that simple act of, may I pray a blessing over you, is saying, and God highlighted you to me, is, I mean, how profound to be lost in darkness, and someone comes to you and says, hey, the one who created you, the God of all things, the giver of life, the giver of light, the God who is love, sees you and wants to bless you. I mean, it's profound, and how that can shift a life in a moment. But that doesn't happen unless we go, unless we step out and we do that. Marsha, I think one of the things sometimes that can be intimidating, especially when we're talking about like ministry to homeless, ministry to those, who, you on the streets. I mean, because you are out there, you are going, in the underpasses, you're in the homeless shelters, you're chaplain of a large homeless shelter. I mean, you are ministering there all the time. And I think one of the things that can be intimidating to us is a lie that says, I don't know how to fix everything. And God's not asking us to fix everything for them.
Yeah.
He's just asking us to bring to them the one who can fix, the one who can restore, the one who can heal, the one who has everything that they need, that we just introduce them.
Yeah.
And open the door for there to be that relationship that they can have with the one who can fix everything. We don't have to do it all.
Right. And I think that's where the confidence comes. And, I've been doing this for 20 years now. And so I've been on this journey with God for a long time now. And what I see is that when he points somebody out, I don't need to fix their problems. What he's asking me to do is just let them know that God saw them in that moment, and just say, hey, God saw you. He loves you, and he would like to pray a blessing over you. And sometimes he will give me a picture. Sometimes he will heal them. But most of the time, what he's asking me to do is simply bring his love. And when I do that, he shows up. And also, when others do that, he shows up for them too. And so that's what I would say. And, some people would say, well, I don't feel like I'm called to the homeless. But, there are times when he's asked me to go to a gas station, or he's asked me just to go to the grocery store, and he'll give me the very first one I did. He showed me a lemon. We were doing a treasure hunt, and we asked God for clues, and he'll give us clues. And he showed me a lemon, and I thought, where am I going to find a lemon and we went to Cub Foods, a grocery store. And the minute I looked up over in the vegetable section, a man put a lemon in a bag. And all I had to do is go up. I thought, oh, here we go. And I said, hey, listen, God gave me a clue to go find a man with a lemon. And when I walked in here, you just put a lemon in your bag. And I believe that's God wanting to bless you. And immediately he began to cry. And I said, wow, what are your tears? And he said, I came in here, my brother died a year ago today. And I was going to have a dinner for him because I was never able to say goodbye. And then you came up to me and I said, well, that's not an accident. I think God wants to bless you. Can I pray for you? And can I bless you and your brother? And he began to cry and he gave his life to Christ. So they come like that. He will it's just a small prompt, but they happen in our everyday, in the grocery stores, at the gas station. For a while, I was traveling to California to take care of my parents, and God started a taxi ministry. So whenever I got in the taxi and I felt God's prompt, I would just say, hey, could I pray a blessing over you? And they love that. And I've done it with taxi drivers from China and Macau and Japan and the Middle East and all over. And I have 30 minutes with them and they receive Christ. So it doesn't have to be that you have to grit your teeth and go out to the homeless. They're everywhere. Statistics, particularly right now, are that the next generation, 30% of them are depressed and suicidal. And so God has really focused me on that generation. Or he took me to the gym, and when I was rowing, he gave me a word of knowledge for somebody right in front of me. And I got off the rowing machine happily and went over to them and said, hey, I feel like God wanted me to bless you. And this is what he showed me. And again, they just give their life to Christ. And it's not by my persuasive words, it's by God's power. And so that's what gives me the confidence, just to follow my what I hear. And if I heard wrong, I just say, oh, well, that's what I thought I heard. How can I pray for you? And 90% of the time people say yes. So I would encourage people in that way.
It's so good. And also when you're going to them, you're not telling them everything that needs to change in their life. All we're doing is bringing the heart of God to them, and so let God, let the Lord complete the work that he begins. But we just want to give the access point of Jesus, the door to the Father, right? So with that, one of the things that I also really love is, as I read through your book, is often you would make the statement, I hesitated,
Yeah.
but then I went for it, and
Yeah.
I think that's just so real. And that when we're about to step out into something, it's like, okay, God, is this you? Is it not? And the reality is let's just go for it. Push past the hesitation, push past the lies of intimidation, because this is wherever we are, if it's the grocery store, as you said, the gas station, wherever it is, there's someone around us who needs to know the good news of who Jesus is and how much he loves them.
Yeah.
And I love coming in with the simplicity of, may I pray a blessing over you? And Proverbs says that our gift makes room for us. And so, Marsha, what you're describing is so beautiful, because really we're coming to someone and saying, may I give you a gift? And there's no better gift than who we have, than the light that we carry. We've got to let this light out from the bushel. We've got to let the light shine.
Yeah.
And, Marsha, your stories are impacting. It's in I love it because there's a simplicity to it that makes it very doable, you know. And I think that there's been an intimidation that our enemy has really delighted in, because it has kept too many just afraid. And what do you have to lose, really? What do you have to lose?
Right.
And we
Right.
have everything to gain.
Right.
Right? I mean, Jesus gave everything for the harvest.
Yeah.
And so what a joy it is to be able to go out and to begin to what he sowed, to begin to help bring in the harvest of what he sowed for others.
Right. But the first thing we always train is it's always about the Father's heart, and it's always about love, honor, and respect. And that we never expose sin or judge or rebuke or preach or correct or counsel people. We are always, even if we see those types of things, we just flip it and we just express a blessing. Like if we see somebody that's addicted, we say, hey, I sense God wanting to bless you with freedom in the season ahead. But if you're intimidated, what we sometimes do, for those who are new, is we'll bring chocolates, we'll bring water, we'll bring gifts, or sometimes what we'll do is we'll bring prophetic pictures, and we'll have pictures, and we'll have a prophetic word, and then we're just asking God, who do you want me to give this to? We just recently trained 50 in a conference, and they all went out and they said, okay, well, let's just go for it. And everybody found their God's treasures, and that's all he's asking us to do. And so what I find as well is that it's as much for us as it is for the other person, because God is wanting us to know that he's willing to use us, that we can hear his voice, that we are his sheep and we do hear his voice. And so virtually everybody does. Even when we're working out with people that are just recently and still in recovery, they go out, and when they come, the joy of God, like filling somebody with love, and you see that love filling them before your eyes, and you know that God used you to partner with him, they realize, oh my gosh, I was made for this. This is who I was created to be. And they come back again and again. Our youngest little evangelist on our team is 4 years old, and she just grabs her dinner and she just sits down with our guests, and she just loves on them, and they are just charmed by that she is so unafraid to go out and just love. But love is just addictive, and people respond. And even when they don't, God will have me go back. Like sometimes people don't respond well, and I'll just say, okay, well, God bless you. And then God, only go back if God sends me. But so many times it's just their defense of when they've not had a good encounter with somebody from the body of Christ. But often they will come when God's sending me back. They'll just say, I was just testing you. And when I see them ultimately open their heart to Christ, it's worth everything. So, yeah.
One of the things that continued to strike me about you as you're ministering to the people that you meet is how humbly you approach them, and it's not and this has been some of the mistakes sometimes that have been made in the past by well-meaning people in the church, right? It's very well-meaning, and we can be so excited and exuberant about who Jesus is, and we need to be, right? But in our approach, that we're not striding in sort of with an attitude of I've got what you need, and here's what here's what you need to do, and but just a humility that comes in, and really what you're saying is, can I serve you?
Yeah.
And that really is ministry, because ministry is serving who's in front of you. That is the depth and the height of ministry right there.
Right.
And humility will open the door. And even, in some of the stories, and I'd love for you to even share one or two with us of when someone was initially rejecting you, or you ask, hey, can I pray with you? Can I give you a blessing? And their initial response is, no, get away from me. And I know there's one story I'm thinking of the girl who had the tattoo on the palm of her hand.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Oh, so we were in California on an outreach, and there was a girl, and we felt like God highlighted her. And so we ran after her and we said, hey, can we pray a blessing for you? And she turned around and she had a tattoo that meant she was in a witch coven. And so she showed it to us and she said, back off. Can't you see I'm owned? And I initially was when it's that strong, I usually will say, okay, well, God bless you, and I will let them alone. But the person I was with pursued her and said, well, even if that's true, we still want to bless you. And she turned around and she said, really? And we said, absolutely. And so she let us come closer to her and we just gave her a hug and we blessed her with a prayer. And she began to cry and she said, nobody has ever been that loving to me. And she gave her life to Christ right then and there.
Yeah.
And wanted to stay in touch. Yeah. So it's amazing what God will do. That's why I do stay humble, because I think that I'm just asked to go in and bring God's presence, and it's God's love that I see over and over that opens that door to, even to those who initially say no. It's because they're wounded and they're afraid, and but when we respond in love, it keeps that door open for what God wants to do. And oftentimes it is that initial extension of love, but it's also like, for instance, if I ask them, hey, I sense God wanting to heal, or I feel like God showed me a picture of this, and sometimes this is with drug dealers and people that are kind of dangerous, and they're a little bit back off. I'll just go, okay, well, sorry, how can I pray for you?
Mm.
And what they want is just an ear, and I'm willing to listen. When he says that, I'll sit down at a table, and this guy, initially was not real thrilled about it. And then I just said, okay, well, tell me how I can pray for you. What's going on with you? And he said, well, I'm surprised actually, because I felt like God forgot about me. And I am able to say, no, you know what? God highlighted you specifically and sent me over to talk to you. And that changes everything. So he's wanting to know what's on your heart so that we can pray. And then they will share their heart. And oftentimes that will lead, they will open their heart to God. And I'm saying, well, that very God that sent me over here wants to be in your heart forever, because he loves you. You're his son. He chose you before the beginning of time. And he has a purpose and a destiny for your life. Who wouldn't want the creator and sustainer of the universe in their heart? And like, well, good point. And they will often pray with me to give their life to Christ. So.
Yeah. You are indeed a treasure hunter, and not only are you finding, the treasures that are who the Lord is saying that one's mine, and going after them, but also when you find them, you're reaching in and pulling out the treasure that is in them that has been covered up by the wounds of their life, just covered up by, I mean, we live in this world. We know what can cause those things. And Marsha, I just so honor you for saying yes and being obedient and going and finding these treasures who are God's, for God's treasure box. It's beautiful. I know there's been times that you have felt like you might be in some danger. What happened? What happens then? What do you do there?
Um,
I'm thinking even of the McDonald's story, where actually there were two people and then it turned into 17. the woman with the spikes at McDonald's? Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I do. And that was pretty early on with some of these risk things too. Yeah. So we were doing an outreach, and again, God highlights them and says, "Hey, go see that one. They belong to me." And I looked over, and I had 4 others in my car, and so we pulled into the parking lot, and there were 2 women, and they were on motorcycles. So they were part of a motorcycle gang, and one woman had spikes coming out of her chin and looked dangerous. And I just looked at everybody. There were like men in the car, and nobody offered to go with me. And I was like, okay, fine. So like, drag me out, but I'm going for it. And you know what? There's danger, and that isn't even one of the worst dangers, but you know what, when I see those and God says, see that one, go get them, honestly, like, I'm getting teary now. God fills me with his love for them. I cannot not. I am compelled, and so I go on that. And when I feel that, it has happened so many times that when I feel that compelling, I know God's going to do it. So I went up to her and I just said, "Hey, we just pulled up. I was driving by, and can I, God highlighted you. Can I pray a blessing for you?" And she just looked at me and just came out of gang face and said, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, how can I pray for you?" And at that moment, the second woman came out for her motorcycle. And when she learned I was going to pray a blessing, she said, "Well, let's wait for this other lady." So this other lady came out, and we prayed for them. And they both gave, all 3 of them, and this little child gave their life to Christ. And we were going to have a banquet later that week on Saturday. And I said, "Hey, we're going to have this banquet. Why don't you come and bring your family?" And so she brought 17, and there were like all generations. There was a grandma and kids and cousins and aunts. And so after dinner, and again, I'm just a little bit like, should I do this? And I said, "Hey, you guys all want to pray to receive Christ?" And the woman with the spice, like, "Come on." And she just gathered them all together, and we got in a circle, and it was just the most blessed prayer I have ever heard. It was a symphony of 17 in that family, all praying with me to give their life to Christ. And, it's those stories that, when I remember, like, this is like, sometimes I'm even saying to God, like, I'll look at something he wants me to go do, and I'm like, "You go do it." Like, oh my gosh. But I remember these moments when it turns out so sweet, and there's so many of them, that I will say yes. Like, sometimes even what he'll do, and that's the blessing of this book, and why one of the reasons why God told me to write these stories in a book is he will use them as a word of knowledge. Like, when he's showing me somebody that looks a little bit dangerous, he'll flash that story, and then I know, oh, okay, it's going to go like that. And it's not going to go exactly like that, but I know it's a word of knowledge. Like, I got this. You go in, just bring my love, and I'll take care of the rest. And I'll see tears, I'll see tears, and they'll come to Christ. And that's my passion. That's what I love, is to see that moment in time where I tell them, God shows you before the beginning of time, and that was a long time ago. Like, the beginning of time was a long time ago, and he's been waiting all of this time for this moment, because he wants to be in your heart. And they sense that, and I see that when they sense that, and they know that, and their countenance and their whole, everything about them changes. And when they hear that God has a destiny for them, it just shifts everything. So I'm happy to be that messenger.
Yeah. And, when we are that messenger, you don't need your car to get home, because you're soaring.
Right.
It's so amazing. You're soaring inside. It feels so good to be able to know that you've been able to introduce them to the one who loves them. And it's so good. And I love, one of the things also that you mention in the book is that, ministry is a no judgment zone.
Right.
And really, our lives need to be a no judgment zone, right? but to keep in mind again in that, to dovetail with the humility that, you walk in, that there's no judgment there. And Marsha, as you're talking about perhaps some dangerous situations, I appreciate the wisdom of making sure that it is what God is saying to do, not just your own impetus to go.
Right.
Because when it's God who is pointing out someone, he's got it.
Right.
You're going with him, and that's different than, let me say it this way, there's wisdom there. And so we definitely want to be wise and not just go in our own strength and our own in our own power and expect God to come along with us. And a lot of times he will, and he'll bail you out, but there's a deeper wisdom. It's always best to say, God, where are you going? And then I'm going to follow you there instead of, I'm going over here, come with me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
good.
and also, like I'll look at a situation and I want to know because I don't want to go on my own strength.
Yeah.
I am such a believer of it's not by my persuasive words, it's by God's power, and that's what I always see shifts the whole situation. Um, so I feel that I feel his love for them, and it's usually an unction like, "Will you go for me?" And then I can always just ask, like, what do you want me to know about this? And that, and even when I'm training people, that's what I love is people don't realize that they can hear from God. And so I'll ask God, what he wants you to know about the situation. And he'll tell me, like, for instance, like a lot of times when I'm on the streets, and like sometimes there's some guys that look a little dangerous, and he will show me a picture of them when they were like 3 years old, holding a Bible with a little suit on, holding on to grandma's hand. And I will go up to them and I'll go, "Hey, God highlighted you and he wants to bless you." And they're like, "Me? No." And I'll go, "Okay, well, you know what? He just showed me a picture of you and you were 3 and you were so cute and you were holding on to, I don't know, is it grandma's hand? Is it auntie's hand? And you're going to church." And they will get teary and they'll go, "That was my Auntie Pearl," or "That was my grandma," or "That was that was my sister and she always took us to church." So, and then that shifts everything. So I teach, just ask God, and they will get an impression. People will get an impression of what God wants to do or say.
That's beautiful, Marsha. And key is faith and to take the risk, step outside of your place of comfort. And when you do that, you're actually going to begin to develop another place of comfort because you're going to gain such a trust, such a dependence and on the faithfulness of God in those times and in those places and circumstances that it actually will become a comfort zone that you begin to walk in because you begin to carve it out for yourself before the Lord. Marsha, thank you. Again, the book is For the One, and I encourage you to get the book, read the book, be inspired by the stories that are in here, knowing that Marsha's great, but it's for you. And it is just a matter of saying yes and stepping out with the Lord and giving him what he so deserves, what is his heart, which is the lost. He wants everybody to come and be with him. He paid a very, very high price for us, and it's beautiful to be able to go and help find those treasures and bring them into the kingdom. Marsha, thank you so much. We always end our Women on the Rise shows with a decree. And today the decree is, love is your greatest aim. You will fervently uh, leave the 99 to find the one. Your life poured out on God's altar. Because you are filled with the Spirit of God, you will do the same works that Jesus did and greater. Your message will be a demonstration of spirit and power. So, women on the rise, know that the glory of God has risen upon you, and it is not to be dormant in you. It's not just for your enjoyment. It's not just for your delight, even though that's certainly wonderful, but it's for unto purpose, that you take that light into the darkness and watch the darkness be dispelled. Thank you so much, Marsha King, and thank you, Women on the Rise. We will see you next time.